Hello, Jamie from Inky&Scrappy back with my Get Creeping on Halloween make for January 2025. Sepia, Creepia. So I will start this one off with saying if you want to know about Get Creeping on Halloween, the description will be down below. If I have time in the video and I remember, I will try to explain it a little bit more. I think I'm on my third year now. So anyways, to start, I bought some heavyweight watercolor card bases on Amazon. You know, they popped up in my feed when I was looking for, I don't remember what I was looking for, but I was looking for something. And I thought I'd give them a try. These are 5.5 by 7 card bases. They come with envelopes. I think it was 60 sets in a pack. So I don't think they were horrible. I think they ended up being like 35 cents a set, which I didn't think was too bad. And their GSM was like 300. So I thought I would give it a shot. I actually kind of enjoyed them. They stayed fairly flat, even with heat setting and all the things. But let's get back to my card. Anyways, I am using Unity Stamps Eerie Enchantment stamp set today. So I, had a few ideas for my January make, and of course the 30th, or the end of the month, crept up on me fairly quickly. Of course, today is the 31st, at least while you're watching it. But, Sunday, I was like, I still have my Get Creeping video or my creation to do for this month. And I was like, I don't even know where I'm going. So I had this set picked out, or another set picked out, and I ultimately ended up going with this one. I had a few different ideas I wanted to go with, but this is what I ended up settling on. I don't remember what I was doing. I think I was perusing Pinterest, and I saw the sepia toned, like, vintagey photo stuff, and I was like, yeah, of a skull. And so that's kind of where this just kind of started from there. And I wanted to see if I could recreate that vintage sepia monotone look on a card. So here we're at. And this is really what Get Creeping is about for me. It's kind of exploring my creativity, trying something different, trying something new, sometimes trying something old in a new way, or just revisiting an old, medium that I haven't played with in a while. And I haven't watercolored in forever. At least not to this extent. I really shouldn't say to this extent, because this one was really easy watercolor-wise. But just not to this, like monochromatic, like trying to keep it all one color. So I stamped my images with Versa Fine Vintage Sepia ink, and then I did heat set them with clear embossing powder over the top. It's stamped really well on my card base. I was, I think I did a double stamp. I probably could have avoided it, but I wanted to make sure that the embossing powder was going to stick. So that was why I did the double stamp, just to make sure that it was going to stick. And then, of course, I did the embossing powder because I didn't want it to, to get buried in the Oxide inks. Now, I was going to start with antique linen, and I had an antique linen distress oxide pad. Don't do that. So I'm hoping I didn't ruin my antique linen distress ink pad. We'll find out in the future. I think it's okay. I picked up most of it with the new sponge dauber. I caught it fairly soon. As soon as I saw the chalkiness, I was like, oh, not cool, woman. So I kind of went sparingly around my images. I was okay with getting it because obviously I'm working on watercolor paper, so I knew I was adding water to this. So I will, erase some of it, quote unquote, erase some of it with water later. And I wasn't too worried about it. I wanted to get my background base in. I thought about doing some masking, which I even had the masking paper out. I was going to double, do my image front and then stamp it again and run it through the Brother's Scan and Cut and mask. And I decided, I hate masking with the passion because it's an extra step. So I was like, I'm time crunched this week. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it without masking and we'll see how it goes. If it's a hot mess, well, then nobody will see this and I'll make something else, and you know, that's kind of how it works. I usually would salvage it, do probably keep my background, stamp my images, color them, and put them on top, because that's, you know, that's how I would have salvaged it. I wouldn't have thrown the whole thing. But so I brought in some vintage photo Oxide ink after I was done with the regular Distress antique linen ink, and kind of worked that into the center. And then for my outside here, I brought in some ground espresso to the outside to darken it up some. It looked like a hot mess while it was happening. Like, it was streaky. I was like, ugh, this isn't working. Like, I think I need to re-ink my Oxide ink pads, which is fine. It's been a little over a year and a half, so it's probably time. But it didn't blend as smoothly as I wanted. It really didn't take me that long. I think the whole process from, you know, stamping, embossing, and then inking probably took me about 15 minutes. I did it before chores, so you will see a clothes change. So I got the ink base done before chores. And I was, you know, once it kind of, you know, it's always, I think it's always rough when you're on your first layer of ink. It's when you go back in the second time and kind of blend the lightest into the darkest, and you go that route again. I think it just kind of cleans it up, and it tends to look a little bit less rough. I hope that makes sense. So if your blends aren't blending like you want them to blend, keep that in mind. A lot of times it's just going over it with a second layer or getting your colors to blend together a little bit better. Of course, being careful with the lightest tone and not doing too much mixing, especially when you go from a regular ink to an oxide. So I tried to not double dip into my Distress ink. Now I'm taking that Eek stamp from that stamp set, and I spritzed it with water, and then I'm just doing some kind of picking up. You know, I was trying to kind of erase some areas, but then I realized, well, as I was wiping it off, I was like, well, it's really transferring quite a bit of ink. So I was like, well, if I'm picking up the dark, why not just stamp it onto some of the lighter and give myself a little bit of interest. I was really looking for some, I ended up pulling out the mixed media. I was planning on doing some mixed media with this one anyways, but I really wanted to do layers, and lots of layers. And so this was just another layer of interest onto a fairly seemingly, you know, I don't want to say plain, but, you know, monotone card. And that was kind of where I was going with it. So I pulled out Vintage Photo and Scorched Timber. I wanted a deeper, darker brown. I think if I would have redone, I maybe would have done Scorched Timber around the outside. I forgot that it's darker than Espresso or ground Espresso. You know, it's been a while. So yes, this is after the farm. So, you know, washed hair, all the things. I zoomed in so you didn't have to see the top of my head. But so basically I'm just going in coloring all of the things, or in the pumpkin's case, uncoloring some of the things. So just going over it with water and then taking a dry towel and blotting it off. It will lift the color and lighten that area. So, you know, it's called Jaime cheating at the masking thing. It worked for me. So I just kind of go and color, you know, using my ink and water and just kind of filling it in. And I'll add layers on here as I go. I do pull in the actual stamp, you know, so I can see what all of it is, because it kind of, I don't want to say it gets lost in the brown, but sometimes the brown on brown kind of got lost a little bit, the details, and it's a fairly fine, it's a red rubber fine stamp. It's stamped beautifully. It was, I think, just, you know, it's stamped onto watercolor paper, which is bumpy and rigid, and so I think you lose a little bit of that detail and crispness in there. But ultimately, I loved how, you know, this one's kind of got that hodgepodge of, kind of gives me a, shall I say, voodoo doll kind of vibe to it. It's just kind of fun and rustic and, you know, obviously the stamp set kind of just like, you know, spoke to me, and that's of course why it ended up in my cart. Possibly. It's not because it was Halloween and spooky, creepy looking, and it, you know, yeah, totally not. No. I'm just going in with different strengths of this vintage photo and scorched timber, and just kind of adding in and coloring in layers as we go. I did speed this one up. This one is at about 3.28 times at the actual speed. I think the whole video is at about that. So the card in total, film-wise, took me about an hour. It probably took me about an hour and 20 minutes total, you know, just overall. I did lighten and kind of just pick up, kind of adding a little bit of shadow underneath the hat there, underneath both of the hats onto their faces, but I really didn't want to add much more color to their face. Zooming back out here, because I'm going to take those leftover ink colors and add some texture paste. This is opaque texture paste, so it's not clear. It's going to be solid when it's dry. It's not going to, you're not going to be able to see underneath it, but ultimately it's still going to pick up some of the color from under it. But I did want to go and kind of add some color on top of it. I didn't want it to be white. I started with that scorched timber, and I didn't like the color as much as I'd hoped I would. And I really wanted to add that warmth in from the vintage photo. Of course, I'm going for the sepia photo look. Also, my paste was a little on the dry side. It wasn't dried out, but adding a little bit of water to it definitely helped move it around a little bit. I did add some water to the pot before I closed it back up, because it was probably getting close to that point where it was close to no return, right? So I did bring in my stencils, and I pondered for a little while. Sometimes the thought process is like the hardest part, like deciding what texture I want on top, where I want to put it. I kind of knew that I didn't want to do the whole thing. I just kind of wanted to do placement here and there. And so ultimately I ended up with the little X's, because I kind of thought it went with their stitched clothing or their patchwork kind of clothing. So I'm bringing in a new to me. It's just I think it's called a mask, like a mask brush, like a face mask brush. So it's kind of like softer, silicone-y, and it works pretty good for the stencils. I don't find that it didn't push the paste underneath the stencil so much, but it kind of glided over the top a lot easier. I kind of like it. I'm not going to lie. It's kind of probably going to be, I'm going to have to try it a little bit more with some of the looser paste to see if I get the same results. This one was, you know, a thicker paste, so I will try it and let you know. I picked it up on like Amazon for like $2, or the Dollar Tree to $2, you know, $1.25, whatever it was. It was super cheap. Hence why it ended up in my art stash. So I took the leftover paste, because God forbid I waste any of it, and I kind of just smeared it onto my card front, you know, just to kind of add some different texture. And then since I was here, I was like, ooh, let me push my red rubber stamp into there. The first two turned out really good. The third one turned out okay, and that last one, yeah, it had gooped up on there, and so yes, you do have to clean. You're gonna have to clean your stamp off fairly well if you do this. At least it's stuck to my stamp a little bit. And then of course, by adding water on to that bottom one, I of course moved the stuff that was underneath it, right? So I will fix it later. You know, I knew that I could fix it with just going over it with the blending tool later, but it's hard to just let it sit and dry, because you know your instinct is to just fix it right away. Okay, that's my immediate instinct is to fix it right away. So I did throw those in, like all of my brushes or my blending tool, you know, my paste tools went in the water, and then I did spray down my stencil so I could do this part, and then I'll go and clean my stencil off. But I just kind of came in with some, I'm trying to think what I did with this one. I think I just came in with Winsor & Newton's watercolor medium, iridescent medium, and of course some of that brown. I think I did scorched timber on this one, don't quote me, and kind of just splattered it liberally. I did cover up my main images here with just a piece of scrap, as you can see. And just kind of, yeah, see, I told you I wasn't very good at waiting, because I was like, it's gonna drive me nuts until I can fix it. So it just kind of gives that shimmer and shine, and I wanted the specklies on it, so I literally just took it over the garbage can and dumped the scraps of paper off, so I didn't have to touch them, because I didn't want to smear any of the ink and or the other things. So I went and washed up everything, cleaned off my surface, and then I came back and I decided I needed to do, you know, a little more. I had kind of wanted to do some sparklies onto her outfit at least, and so I did come back looking at the image, kind of deciding where maybe I wanted some lighter areas, where I wanted to draw some attention. So I did bring in this one is Artist Loft Iridescent Acrylic Medium. It's a shinier sparkle. It feels like it's got a bigger glitter chunk to it than the Winsor & Newton. Winsor & Newton reminds me more of a mica spray, where the Artist Loft acrylic one kind of has like a glittery effect to it. I hope that makes sense. But I did bring in the antique linen in, of course, the Oxide, so it kind of has that chalkier effect to it, and it's going to stand out on top a little bit more. I just wanted to draw in kind of like the white, can I say quote unquote white areas? Yes, that is the back of my beautiful head after my shower. And then once I was all done with that, I came back in with my paper towel. It's actually a shop towel, so if you're looking for a new kind of, I don't know, it's not a paper towel, it's a shop towel. So it doesn't leave a lint behind, I don't think, at least not as bad as a paper towel, and it doesn't have a pattern. So I may have stole it from my husband's shop. Shh, don't tell him. I won't. I did come in, of course, with that antique linen Oxide ink and splattered that throughout. I wasn't worried too much about getting it on the actual characters at this point. I was very strategic on my splatter for the most part. That's why I brought in the block. And then, of course, I'm bringing in some more of that vintage photo, and not vintage photo, the scorched timber, and then I'm going to add shadows under the images. I felt they needed some more grounding, and I don't know, I wanted that grounding to be a little bit more, so I'm just going to come in and kind of add a little bit to it. So it's kind of what I do, and just kind of bring it down just a little bit, because the light's obviously behind them. At least that's kind of what the background to me looks like that light is behind them. So I brought in a little bit more. I don't think I added enough water the second time around, because it did not dry very good. So I'm pretty sure I don't remember if I did it on camera or not, but I did bring in a little bit more water and added a little bit more to it, and then it dried better. It just, maybe it was just in my head and it took longer than I wanted it to take. I don't know. I don't know if I would go over the eeks again on my medium there. Just, I don't know. It looks better now that it's all the way dry. I just wasn't happy with it at that point, and I was like, what did I do? Ultimately, it was fine. And then I'm just going to remove the washi tape here. It mostly stayed on the front of my card. I didn't have too much overlap yet. See, here's where I was like, yeah, it's not drying very fast. And so then, of course, I tried picking some up. And I picked up a little bit of the ink from the other and went over it again. I think I ended up doing it again because I picked up too much of it. I was struggle busting it. That's all I'm going to say. So I then, added some more splatter, because why do when you can overdo? So I added a little bit more splatter. And why do when you can overdo? Of course. So there is my completed one. I felt I got that vintage sepia photo to it. And then I do have a picture of the inside. I did finish it and created a matching envelope. But Get Creepy on Halloween, anyone is allowed to do it. Just use the hashtag Get Creepy on Halloween. If you do it on Instagram, please tag me at InkyandScrappy so I can creep on your creep too. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day. Keep being creepy. Bye! And guess who forgot to tell the Get Creepy on Halloween details during the actual video? Yeah. See? Told you.